Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will learn about one of the most powerful aspects of WordPress, custom post types. Now before we learn about custom post types, let's first answer the question, what is a post type? So I'm in the WordPress admin and I want to show you that by default, out of the box, WordPress websites only come with two post types, posts and pages. A page is actually just a post with a special post type of page. To illustrate what I mean, if you click on Pages in the sidebar, take a look at the address up in the URL bar. It ends with edit.php, and then the parameter is post type equals page. This means that all items or entries of content in WordPress are really just posts with different labels, different post type labels. Now, yes, out of the box, we are limited to just posts and pages, but since we are developers, we can write a little bit of code and we can create as many new custom post types as we want. So by the end of this course, instead of just having posts and pages, we will have other items here in our sidebar named events and programs and professors and campuses. In this lesson, let's begin with events. So let's give ourselves a goal. On the home page of our website, we see an upcoming events area, and we want to create an item or an entry, or I should say a post, for each event. But we don't want to create a generic post because then that would show up in the blog feed. So what we're going to do is create a brand new custom post type named events. Okay, and then it will show up in the admin sidebar, and we can begin creating new event posts. So right now, let's jump into our text editors and write the code to make that happen. Within your theme folder that we've been working on throughout the course, I want you to jump into the functions.php file. Our goal is to register or create a new post type. So maybe down at the very bottom of this file, let's write a bit of code. Let's begin with add action, because when you want to tell WordPress to create a new post type, we cannot use the event hook of after setup theme or WP on queue scripts. In this case, we need to tack on to a different event hook. So down here on this new line of code, we are interested in the hook named init. Okay, so that's the first argument, and then the second argument is the name of a function that we will create in just a moment from now. So again, we get to make this function up, so it could be pizza or unicorn. The name does not matter. But just to make a little bit of sense, why don't we call it university underscore post types. And then let's add a semicolon at the end of that line. Okay, so now WordPress will call a function with this name at precisely the right moment. So we better make sure that a function with this name exists. So maybe right above that line, let's go ahead and create it. So the word function, and then the name of the function that we want to create. Again, the name doesn't matter, but I feel like this name makes sense. So university post types, parentheses, curly brackets. Okay, and now within the body of this function, we can get back to our actual goal. Remember that we wanted to create or register a new post type. We can call a function that is aptly named register post type. This is a WordPress function that will take care of the heavy lifting for us. We just need to pass it two arguments. The first argument is the name of the custom post type that we want to create. So let's say event, right? You could make up any name you want. We're going with event. And then the second argument is an array of different options that describe your custom post type. So remember, to create an array, you just type out the word array and then give it its own set of parentheses. And then within those new parentheses, why don't we drop down to a new line just to stay organized. And now we just create an associative array that describes what kind of post type we want. Remember, an associative array was the example where we might say cat equals meow or dog equals bark. Okay, in this case, let's just start with one simple parameter. Let's say that public equals true. This will make the post type visible to editors and viewers of the website. Okay, so with that line of code in place, if I save this file and jump back into the WordPress admin, I don't even need to refresh because I'm using the proxy preview server from our previous automation lessons. But you'll notice that we have a new item in the sidebar here. Now it says posts, even though we already have a posts up here. But if I go ahead and click on this newly created posts that's closer to the bottom, if you look up in the address bar, you can see that it ends with post type equals event. Cool, so we've created a new post type, but obviously we don't want the sidebar label to still be posts. We want this to say events. So back in our code, within our associative array, we just need to give it a little bit more information about this post type. So at the end of this public equals true line, let's add a comma, so then we can add another line. Let's target the parameter named labels. And what should it equal? Well, instead of just typing the word events here, we don't want to do that. Instead, what we want to do is give this labels parameter an array of its own. So type out the word array and then parentheses. And then you know me, I like to drop down to a new line for each array so that each item in the array can be on its own line. Okay, and the first subparameter that belongs to the labels parameter is named name, and let's set that to equal events. Now there are tons of other label parameters aside from name, and we will cover those later in the lesson, but for the time being, this is all we need. So if I save that, cool, now we can see in the sidebar that it's using a proper name of events. However, it's still using the same thumbtack icon that our generic blog posts post type is using. And you'll notice that each item in the sidebar from top to bottom has its own unique icon. So let me show you how we can give our events post type its own custom icon. Back in our text editor, let's just add another parameter within this top level array, right? Not within the labels subarray. So you could either add a new line here, right, in between this item and this item, or after the labels parameter and its value, we could just add a comma here, and then we can add another item to our top level associative array. So the parameter we want to target is called menu underscore icon. And what do we want to set this to equal? Well, right now I want you to Google for WordPress -icons. The top official result should take you to developer.wordpress.org. And from this page, you can see as I scroll down, there are all sorts of different icons to choose from. When you see an icon that catches your attention, just go ahead and click on it. Now in this case, I'm creating a post type called events, so I think a calendar would make sense, right? So if I click on this icon, here it shows me a larger or high resolution copy of it, but more importantly, directly to the right of the large icon, it tells me the code name for that icon. So you can either copy and paste or just remember that code name, but back in the text editor, let's say menu icon equals -icons calendar. And as soon as I save that back in our admin, cool, our custom post type of events now uses that calendar icon. At this point, why don't we go ahead and try to create a few new event items or event posts. So we can either use the add new link in the sidebar or click add new right here. Let's title the first one Math Meetup. Include a bit of dummy content. Click publish. And why don't we create a couple more? So click add new again. Title this one The Science of Cats. Dummy content. Publish. Let's create one more. So add new. Title it Poetry Day. Dummy content, publish. Okay, so we can create new events, and if I click events in the sidebar, that shows me a list of all of the currently existing events. However, the code that is making this custom post type possible lives within our theme folder. And we all know that in WordPress, it's very easy to switch between different themes. So what if tomorrow someone switched off of our fictional university theme and picked a different theme? My question is, what would happen to our events post type, and what would happen to these 3 events that we've already created? Well, we can simulate what it would be like to switch to a different theme by simply jumping into our functions.php file, and let's just temporarily delete the custom post type code that we wrote in this lesson. Don't worry, we can Control Z or Command Z and undo that in just a minute from now. But if I delete it and save, now when I try to access the View All Events screen in the admin, I see invalid post type. And if I just go back to the home page of the WordPress admin, we no longer see events anywhere in the sidebar. Now, it's not like those 3 sample events that I created got deleted from the database. Our content is safe. It still exists in the database. It's just that now we don't have any way to really access it. So we've essentially been locked out from editing and accessing our own content. And that is never good. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that, let me go back into functions.php and add that code back in. The point that I'm trying to make here is that functions.php is not the absolute best place to keep this custom post type code, right? Because we don't want access to our data to be reliant on a certain theme being activated. Instead of a theme, this is probably a better use case for a plugin. However, as you know, when it comes to WordPress plugins, they can easily be activated and deactivated. And again, if someone deactivated our custom post type plugin, well, then they'd be in the same situation where they're locked out from accessing their custom post types. So in my opinion, the best way of handling custom post types is by leveraging something in WordPress called must-use plugins. Must-use plugins live in their own special dedicated folder, and you cannot deactivate them. As long as the PHP file exists in the must-use plugins folder, WordPress will indeed use it. Let me show you what I'm referring to. So right now, I want you to find the folder where your WordPress system files live. So in my case, that's local sites, and then fictional university, and then app. Okay, and then everyone in the course has these files and these folders. These are the WordPress system files. So I want you to dig into the WP content folder, and then this is where we see folders like plugins and themes. So normal plugins obviously live in this plugins folder, but what I want you to do right now is create a brand new folder and name it MU-plugins. So MU stands for must use. Okay, now any PHP files that we include within this must use plugins folder will be automatically and always loaded and activated by WordPress. So this is a perfect place to include our custom post type code. So that way the owner of the website will never accidentally get locked out from accessing their content. Or I should say the content that's of a custom post type. So right now, let's go ahead and create a new PHP file that lives within this folder. So if I go back a folder, I can just open this MU plugins folder in my text editor, and then let's create a new file within that folder. It does not matter what you name the file. So you could name it pizza or unicorn, but just to make sense, why don't we name it university posttypes.php. Again, you could name it whatever you want. So we've got this new empty file. Now we just want to cut and paste the PHP code back in functions.php that we wrote throughout this lesson, right? So that includes the new function that we created as well as the add action line. So copy all of that into your clipboard, or actually cut it into your clipboard because we want to remove it from functions.php. So as soon as I save that, we no longer see events in our sidebar. But let's just go ahead and paste it into that new plugin file that we were working on. So back in the must use plugins folder within our brand new empty file, just begin with PHP tag and then go ahead and paste in your clipboard. Cool, so here's the code we've been working on in the lesson so far. Let's save that. And now when I jump back to the admin, we are back in business. There's events. And even if the owner of the website switches to a new theme or deactivates all of their plugins, our code that makes the events post type possible will still be loaded by WordPress. Now before we bring this lesson to a close, I want to circle back to this labels array. So far, we've only addressed the parameter named name, right? And that's what controls the name in the sidebar, so we see events. But when I try to create a new event, you might have noticed that up here towards the top, it reads add new post. But I would prefer it say add new event. So back in our text editor, Within this labels array, right after this name events line, let's add a comma, new line, and let's target a parameter named add new item, and let's set that to equal add new event, right? Or you could type whatever you want here. But as soon as I save that, cool, so that makes a lot more sense to me. On a similar note, if I go back to this screen and try to edit one of my existing events, the headline reads edit post, but it would make sense if it said edit event instead. So back in our text editor, let's add another item to that labels array. So comma, new line, let's say edit item, and let's set it to equal edit event. Save that. Cool. A smaller detail that you might have noticed is if you hover over posts or pages in the sidebar, the first main option so you can see a list of all of the items to edit them reads all posts or all pages. But for events, it doesn't say all events, it just reads events. So if you want to customize what that reads, back in the text editor, let's add a comma and a new line. The parameter is all items, and then just set it to equal whatever you want. So we could say all events instead of just events. Save that, and now we see that it behaves just like posts and pages. We see all events. And just for good measure, another parameter that I like to add here, comma, new line, is singular name. So let's set that to equal event, right? No S on the end, just single. Now there are tons and tons of other label parameters that you can customize, but I feel that these 4 or 5 usually get the job done for me quite well. If you want to see a comprehensive list of all the parameters that you can customize, just Google for the name of this function, register post type. One of the top official results will take you to codex.wordpress.org, and this page has all sorts of information about that function. And if you scroll down just a bit to parameters, here we see the labels parameter, and this list shows you every single parameter that you can customize. I don't feel like it's necessary to fill out every one of them, but maybe you do. It's up to you. And that's going to bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we will learn how to actually pull in event items into the home page or into any of our template files. So for example, instead of this fake hard-coded static HTML that we see here, we would want to load in real dynamic posts that are from the events post type. It should be a lot of fun. Let's keep it rolling, and I will see you then.